I'm having a really good May, reading-wise and otherwise. Lots of things seem to be going my way. Hope I didn't jinx myself. Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Saturday Hodgepodge. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so if you don't know, this is my weekly wrap-up of, or my mostly weekly wrap-up of reading, booktube things, bookish stuff, anything else that I want to talk about. I'm going to start off by talking about books. I've had an incredibly good reading month so far. If you follow my channel, you know that I've already finished and reviewed Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks, which I really liked, as well as Boulder by Eva Baltazar, translated from the Catalan by Julia Sanchez. I thought both of those books were really great. I'll leave a link to the review if you haven't seen it at the end of this video. But since it's been a while since I talked to you, we had a Saturday Hodgepodge, I wanted to go over the other books I've read. So I just finished today. This is Friday. You'll see this on Saturday. I had just finished today Human Acts by Kang, or Hong Kong. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the name, but I'm going to say Han Kang because I like that better. And this is my first book by this author. I've seen a number of her books recommended. I saw Mark Nash review one not too long ago. And so I had at one point acquired a copy of this on my Kindle for like $2. And so I thought, well, this is the month that I'm going to try to read it. And I did. And like I said, I just finished it today, and I thought it was really, really, really good. I'm not sure I think it's great. If you don't know, this is probably not the best known work by Han Kang that exists. And it really centers on kind of an uprising against dictatorial government in South Korea that took place in 1980, I believe, in the city of Gwangju, or Guanyo, I can't remember the exact name. And this was something I knew absolutely nothing about. I had no idea about this from history, only a vague idea of the evolution of democracy in South Korea. And so I really went into this knowing nothing. And I was immediately struck by the quality of Kang's writing, the intricacy with which this story is created, the kind of creative way in which the story is put together as a series of perspectives on an event, on a massacre and its aftermath that took place in that city at the hands of government military forces, which resulted in the deaths of students and young people and labor union people who were trying to rise up for greater democracy, which is all based on a true story. The author, Han Kang herself, was born in Gwangju herself, but wasn't there at the time of the uprising, and this became apparently something that was a bit of an obsession for her in finding out. This is one of those books where it's difficult to necessarily figure out where history and fiction, where the history ends and the fiction begins. It is a novel, it is a work of fiction, but I can't imagine a work of history giving you better insight into the ideas, the people, the behavior of government this time. It is a perfect fit for Misery May. There is no sunshine in this book. There is nothing in this book that is, necessarily uplifting, other than just the idea of endurance and moving forward, and perhaps forgiveness and remembering and holding to account people for what they did. It is brutally violent. There's a description of killings, murders, torture, sexual violence, are all can be found within the book. So, you know, content trigger warnings there for you. But I really liked it, and I'm going to read more of Hong Kang's books soon, I hope. The second book I read, or I wanted to mention that I read, is the first book in the Murderbot series. That's All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This book is the first in a series that follows the Murderbot. That's what this kind of cyborg, I'm not exactly sure since I'm not really a science fiction person. It's a blending of computer and mechanical parts with human parts. This kind of cyborg, this kind of robot whose job is essentially security, and so, you know, it has training and weapons for killing and defense. Except this robot, the Murderbot, has managed to hack their own system so that they can control what information is being fed to them. And mainly they did this not so they could become independent, but so they could essentially watch television. They could, like, watch streaming entertainment and become addicted to it. So you get kind of the idea right away that this is not, you know, your typical kind of robot gone rogue or robot with human qualities story. Certainly those elements are there, but I just thought it was really fun. It's really exciting. Once the pace picks up, which doesn't take long, it is a compulsive read, and I just thought it was really, really good. Even though it's a book in a series, as far as I know, based on this book, each book kind of deals with one complete aspect of the story, and then, as was true in All Systems Red, leaves a window for Murderbot to move on to the next thing that's going to happen. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of a perfect thing to read after some of the other books I read. Got through it really fast. The next book I want to talk about that I read is Kibogo by the Rwandan writer Scholastique Mukasonga. This book was translated from the French by Mark Polizzotti. This is my second book by Mukasonga. I read Our Lady of the Nile. I still haven't read, I think it's Mosquitoes, and then there's another book by Mukasonga I haven't read that I want to read. This book was in one of my favorite independent presses, Archipelago Press. I love the style of their books. Even though I have the picture up here, I'm going to hold it up. I love the style of their books a lot. And I read this one after having seen, I think that now I know that it was Sean and Heidi from My Reading Life, Sean the Book Maniac and Heidi from My Reading Life, who'd read it and not necessarily liked it that much. And I also know that Jack the Rambling Raconteur has a video about it. I read it and I liked it. What it basically talks about is a Rwandan village on a mountainside around the time of World War II in there. And it kind of really is, there aren't necessarily main characters, even though they're characters and people who, you know, play a role in it. And it's divided, I think, 5 different sections. But what it really explores is the impact of colonialism and colonization on this Rwandan village. Their struggle to maintain their cultural identity, their struggles against corrupt government, their struggles against corrupt church officials, their struggles to deal with things like famine and drought and what they turn to. And then it describes the destruction of their culture, of their religion, of their traditional ways of life, the appropriation of their culture, etc. And it's all really done in a really, I thought, creative way in which it's framed almost like we are hearing a folk tale that's being told to us about these events taking place and blending the two things together. And I really thought it was really well done, and I think I liked it. I mean, I liked it a lot. Do I think it was great? No, but I did like it a lot. And the other book I want to mention too that I finished is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. Meg Mason lives in Australia now with her family. I believe this is her only book. And this was just so much fun to read. the book is that kind of, as the name would kind of indicate, the book is a tremendously well done blending of humor and pain and joy and sorrow, as the name indicates, and it's just really well done. In the beginning, we meet our main character, whose name is Martha, and we recognize that Martha has some struggles, has some mental struggles, and what exactly her condition is never named, but I think you can guess from reading the book. And in the beginning, the book is just funny. There are all kinds of one-liners and descriptions and stories that I think are just really, if you like that kind of thing, if you like kind of acerbic, wry humor, I think those things are going to work for you. And then as the book goes along and we follow Martha's struggles in relationships with her incredibly weird, quirky family. Her father is a poet who never publishes anthology of poetry, or hadn't published anthology of poetry. Her mother is an artist who makes art out of reclaimed household items and tools, and there's a really funny way of referring to her as just right below or not yet important artist is how I think she's described. Her sister, Martha's sister, who is younger than her, but in lots of ways almost her twin. They really look alike. Who has kids all the time, the drop of the hat. There's a really funny scene involving the birth of one of her children. And then we have Martha and her struggles with her mental health, her struggles with her job, her struggles with motivation and what she wants to do, her struggles with her family and coming to grips with what her family's done and what she's done to her family, her relationships, which involves 2 marriages, neither of which particularly successful, and how that all gets resolved. And I think it gets resolved in a way which is realistic. As you go through the book, the humor becomes less present, and kind of the emotional impact of the story and what's going on with Martha becomes more resonant, but the humor never really fully goes away. So just to give you an idea of how funny I think the book is, and the danger of reading something funny is that you may not think it's funny when I read it, and it may have to be more in context. But in the first few pages of the book, first few chapters, there's just it's really kind of jokey. And I worried that it would be too jokey all the way through, and it really doesn't. I think the humor is handled masterfully well. So I'll just read 2 paragraphs, one from page 32 and one from page 33. Supposedly, it was the stress of my illness that caused her, this is Martha's mother, to get fat. Ingrid said that if that was true, it was also my fault that she began wearing sack dresses, waistless muslin or linen, invariably purple, layered over one another so that their uneven hems fell around her ankles like corners of a tablecloth. She has not deviated from the style since, except for acquiring an additional layer for each additional stone. Now she's essentially spherical. The impression is of many blankets thrown haphazardly over a birdcage. I thought that was a brilliant, if not incredibly sensitive description of Martha's mother. And then this little bit, just kind of it's a detail that matters, but it's just kind of like a funny aside. Page 33, Mason writes, talking about Martha, or talking from Martha's point of view. Last year I got glasses that I do not need because the optometrist fell off his rolling stool during the eye test. He looked so mortified I started reading the letters wrongly on purpose. They are in the glove box, still in the bag. And give you some idea of what Martha's like, which you have to kind of keep in mind because as a main character, she is oftentimes incredibly unpleasant and frustrating. But there is a lot more there, which even she doesn't necessarily see, but we begin to see as readers, and she will find out. Anyway, I really enjoyed Sorrow and Bliss, which I know was recommended to me by Scott over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. So that was my reading so far this week. Other things I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to, on Thursday, I posted a video, 11 unpopular bookish ideas, I think is what I titled it. And idea number 10 has received so far kind of the most comments and, kind of disagreeing with me, which is great. I love it. I love these discussions. And in unpopular opinion number 10, I essentially said that writers should not write stories about the experiences of people who belong to groups that they're not a part of. Probably the most obvious example of this happening recently and causing some controversy was the publication of American Dirt, which tells the story of a migrant family crossing the U.S. border and the struggles they have in doing that from Mexico. And it was written by Janine Cummings. And Cummings is not Hispanic, not Latino. And so a lot of people took issue with her use of the story of migrant Latino people in her kind of sensationalist novel. And if you don't remember, there was quite a controversy around it. And you know, my point of view is that if you're going to tell a story that centers on the experience of a specific group of people, I think it's important for you to have firsthand knowledge of that, for you to be a part of that community and that experience. And I think in that way, Cummings really wasn't. She at one time claimed she had Hispanic heritage. That ends up not being true, which actually made the controversy a lot worse. By the way, her publisher didn't help her out with the way in which they launched the book. Anyway, there are all kinds of things like that. But, you know, while I don't think, Janine Cummings is the worst person in the world for writing this book, I do think that authors should avoid writing books that center on experiences of groups that are not theirs. Now, what a lot of people point out in the comments, and somebody even referenced R.F. Kuang talking about this exact issue, what a lot of people point out in the comments is that would mean, that black authors can only write about black characters, and that gay authors or LGBTQ plus authors can only write about LGBTQ plus characters, and that's not really what I mean. I'm not saying, and I'm going to put this from the point of view to start off with, of white authors. I'm not saying white authors cannot write books in which there are black or gay or trans or Asian characters. They can. But if the point of that book is to provide insight about the experience of black or gay or Asian or trans people, then I think that they have crossed the line. That a white author writing that book has crossed a line where I feel like they're in somebody else's business, for lack of a better way of putting it. That they are writing about something, an experience that they don't have, that at best they can only have experienced through research. Somebody pointed out to me, couldn't they do a lot of research? And I suppose the answer to that is yes, but again, I wonder why. What would motivate, and I'm just going to say it again, what would motivate a white author to do that, to write that book, to center a book in the experience of a group of people that they don't belong to and they don't have firsthand knowledge of? Now, if you turn it the other way, I don't have as many reservations, and in many cases almost no reservations, with authors who come from traditionally what we consider minority groups in the United States of America writing books that that are in some way centered on white characters or in the white world. And the reason for this is because minority authors and minorities in the United States of America have to live in the spaces, or have to live with and accommodate the majority white world. In other words, they have up close firsthand experience of the majority white world, because for their groups of people to survive, thrive, if they do, then they have to kind of figure out how to work around the prejudices, the power, the economic callousness of the white majority. And so they have, I think, a lot of insight into, the white majority that white majority authors would not have into the Hispanic experience, or the trans experience, the gay experience. So I don't have a problem nearly as much with writers from those communities centering their books in the white world, because in the white experience world, because they live in that world too. They're not insulated from it by their majority status. Now, are there obviously white authors, and can this obviously, is this a hard and fast rule in which I can absolutely say it's always right or it's always wrong? No. Of course, there are going to be exceptions to that. But I do think in this case, there is in my mind, a double standard in which I am more than happy. Somebody pointed out that The Trees by Percival Everett is set in the white, kind of rural, white, rednecky South, and what a great job Everett does of rendering that world. That's true, but his main characters are black, and they are what they're showing about that world is how black people have to accommodate or fight against or work within or live around that, and how they have to, how that affects them. That is different than I think what Janine Cummings did. Anyway, I'm not sure that explanation is better. Ross pointed out to me in a comment that this probably should be a whole video. I'm not sure I can make a whole video about it, but it's a topic that's worth a whole video. Anyway, let me know what you think about what I said this time in the comments below. So the only thing I want to do is I want to shout out 3 channels that are relatively new to me. One is Kit the Reader. They are a British booktuber who I just find the way they talk about books, the way they talk about themselves to be really disarmingly open and charming, and the books they read and the books they talk about I think are great, and I really enjoy watching Kit's content. If you haven't subscribed to Kit the Reader, I'll leave a link down below, obviously, as is true for others' channels. Also then, The Left-Handed Reader, I believe that creator's name is Renee, is just one of those like people who I feel like is just made to be successful in booktube. And by this I don't mean they read, you know, what we stereotypically think makes someone successful in booktube, but an incredibly clear speaking style, clear thinking. As far as I can tell, Renee's taste in books runs fairly closely to mine, and what I assume is true of many of you. And their videos are just, you know, straight up them talking about books videos. I found her videos to be great. And the last one I want to shout out is a channel called Daryl Sweet. I assume that is relative to Daryl's name. Daryl did a video about the International Booker Award, which I liked, and I'm waiting until I finish Suzette Mayer's The Sleeping Car Porter, to watch his review of The Sleeping Car Porter. Now I'm a little worried about Daryl because he hasn't put out a video for a month, but he is a little bit more sporadic in his videos, which can be a great thing. Anyway, there you go. Those are 3 channels I wanted to shout out. The last thing I want to leave you with is, you know, 3 of my favorite songs from the other Canadian power trio. If you don't know who the first Canadian power trio is, that's Rush, which was one of my favorite bands when I was in high school. I still have a lot of nostalgic feelings for them, and in a similar way, I feel that way about the band Triumph as well. Now, Triumph not nearly as well known, and I will say that in today's world, their songs have a tendency to seem a little bit, you know, you can do it cheesy, kitschy, upbeat, but at the time, you know, when I was a teenager and when I wanted to feel upbeat and empowered and like I could do it, I oftentimes listened to Triumph songs. So I have 3 here. One is an instrumental called Midsummer's Daydream, which is really short. The second is Fight the Good Fight, which is a relatively long song with more than one guitar solo, but I just really like. And then probably their most popular song and their best song, I think, is obviously Magic Power, which is about the power that music has to kind of make life better. So, you know, if you're in an angsty, unhappy mood, maybe don't click on the links to the videos below. If you're like feeling happy, remember Triumph has some kind of nostalgia there, you know, let me know. And I'm hoping this is not a repeat of me talking about Triumph before. And I always keep up with these things. Anyway, there you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.